Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's your host, Griever, as always, bringing you guys another one off of the list of 500 milestone video suggestions. For those of you who don't know, when I hit the 500 milestone marker, I made a video asking all of you, yes, you guys, what type of video do you want for my 500 milestone video? And I got a lot of responses, but not really a lot of, okay, it's definitely this topic. So there wasn't a lot of consensus on what people wanted me to do or talk about. So I decided, let's do a huge undertaking and do them all. So that's what we're here to do today, and this particular one is going to be on my favorite, or at least one of my favorites. I didn't get a chance to reread all the shoujo manga I've ever read, but shoujo manga, as a mostly shonen, seinen, battle, gaming sort of channel, I don't do a whole lot of shoujo content, but I have seen requests previously about talking about more shoujo content on this channel, whereas I already cover Akatsuki no Yona. People were wondering if this is the only shoujo I'm really interested in, or if I've read more, etc., etc. So I thought this would be a fun opportunity for me to talk about one of my favorites. You guys know it from the title. It's Maid-sama, or The Class President is a Maid. The manga, the anime, whichever way you want to look at it, I've seen both. I enjoy both. Let's just get underway and talk about it. The way I'm going to structure this video, however, is right down here, you're going to see, this is the introduction. And as we go through the different sections of it, there will be a spoiler section sort of near the end of the video, and also something that we probably should talk about regarding this series, especially in 2021. We're going to have to talk about that because it got a lot of backlash, and I'll let you guys we'll talk about that and exactly why that is later on in the video. But right here, we're just going to keep this sort of semi-formatted so I don't get long-winded about one particular topic and jump all over the place. So we're going to be covering the premise of the series, then we're going to cover the characters, some of my favorite characters, what I liked about the series and what I don't like about the series, and so sort of a pros and cons or what have you. And then we'll talk about, as I said, we'll talk about any spoiler specific stuff so that most of the review can, you guys can see it and you can enjoy it and go, hey, I should pick this up without worrying about too many spoilers here at the beginning of the video. And then, as of course at the end, we'll talk about the ending of the series and the controversy surrounding this series. And maybe we'll do a little section on the anime. Maybe not. But that being said, let's just jump right into the premise. The premise is romance. And that's not very surprising, given the demographic of shoujo. I mean, whether it's comedy, drama, or slice of life, there always seems to be a bit of tacked-on romance, whether it's heavily into the story or it takes a back seat. It tends to be much more popular in the shoujo demographic. It's no different from shonen, usually being tied to the action and the adventure genres types. It's just the way the demographics are. But I like the little change-ups that this series particularly does, especially with its premise. Because not only do we have our main character, Misaki, who is, by the way, a total badass, the way she starts off in this chapter, the way that we just jump right in chapter 1 to her story, we find out her situation, we know what's going down, and it's just hilarity ensues. It's a great premise. But you guys are sort of wondering, all right, we get that, but can you elaborate a little bit? Can you tell us the premise? We could learn more from a wiki page. And don't you worry, guys. I'll tell you right now. The premise basically is that Misaki has gone to this high school where it used to be an all-boys school. It recently turned into a co-ed school, but the population is still an 80-20 split, give or take, for guys to girls. And I don't know if you've ever been to a high school or locker room, but yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So it's definitely not a great atmosphere, not a great environment, and very awkward and uncomfortable for the very few female students in this school that is just ravenous with teenage boys. You're right? So Misaki, however, our main character, and the title, she's the class president, she works hard to become the class president. And if you guys have read manga for any length of time, you know what I didn't know, is that the CIA, the government, the MI6s, NASA, the FBI, all of them pale in comparison to a student council in manga. The student council organization in a manga is always the most powerful organization in the known universe. It always has been, and it always will be. And in this series, it's no different. Misaki works hard to become the student council president to bring change to the school, and she rules the school with an iron fist, being, at the beginning of the series, being very big on man-hating and really sort of bringing down the gauntlet on the guys, like to the umpth degree. She brings all 9 circles of hell with her, and she becomes known as the demon president while ruling the school with that iron fist. However, there is a catch. Her family's quite poor, so she needs to work part-time to be able to, of course, help with the debts and the bills. Unfortunately, now that she has the position of student council president and also needs to, along with all those duties, she, of course, needs to, and all the big changes that she's trying to bring and keeping her grade average and all this stuff, she can no longer work as she used to, being like in construction or something, because here's another cool thing about her character. She's got the strength of 10 men. She's really strong, really independent, and outgoing. So the thing is, she needs to find another job to help pay the bills. Well, the only one that she could find that would accommodate her school schedule, the manager is always very easy about everything, that working around that, and also has a decent pay, is a maid cafe. Now, here's the snitch. Here's the little bit of the hitch, if you will, is that working as a maid, well, while as a fine part-time job for some, maybe not exactly the best image when you have carved an image of a demon president that is unbreakable, and the guys are all always trying to undermine, and she continues to beat them down with solid facts, rules, and that demon aura. All of that could be shattered easily if everyone were to find out that she works as a maid. So therein lies the title, therein lies the premise. And hilarity ensues, especially when, in Chapter 1, the most popular boy at school, who's sort of got a little bit of mystery around him, finds out that the president, the demon president herself, is working at a maid cafe. And knowing this secret, she continues to worry, when will he blab to the rest of them that he knows the secret, that she's working at a maid cafe. So that's the premise of the story. If it sounds a little quirky, it is. It's actually a great premise, though, because we get a lot of layers of storytelling right off the bat. Not only are we dealing with the fact that we have potential character development in our main character Misaki right off the bat, with the fact that not only is she already got antagonists in the boys from the school, her attitude towards working, her attitude towards men, her attitude towards work ethic, her attitude towards, all that stuff. On top of that, we also have, this is the best part that I like, is that now she's also trying to keep the secret that she is working as a maid, and she only works as a maid to help support her family. All of this boils down to the fact that even without the romantic interest of Usui Takumi in the first chapter, it's already a decent story. But then we add the layer of a romantic interest right out of the gate as well. And there's, of course, a cast of more characters and such. But I really think that the premise of this story would catch a lot of people's eye. It's not exactly just, the jock on the sports team and the girl who fell in love with him and stuff like that. It's definitely a big twist on your standard, high school drama romance. It's got a lot of different layers and a lot of differences from just the traditional ones, at least that I found. Now to move on to characters, we've already talked a little bit about our main characters, Usui, the main love interest, and our main character Misaki, the demon president herself, who is secretly a maid. But what about some of the other characters? And without spoiling, I will say that some of them fall flat, but a lot of them actually have great storylines. Some of them, even though they might be sidelined and in the background, some of them have fantastic storylines. A perfect example of this is a character that we meet semi-early on named Aoi. Aoi is without being able to get into too many spoilers, it's definitely something that I could see would spark a lot of controversy. The way Aoi's character is portrayed and the way Aoi's character develops is actually really good and balances out this story quite well, because we'll get to why in the later part of the video when we talk about the criticisms and why and the backlash for this series. But suffice it to say that Aoi actually brings that tone back full frontal. It's definitely good to see this sort of story in 2021, given all of the problems with and all the backlash that people receive over identity, whether sexual identity or gender identity or equality and all these things. Aoi represents a certain demographic that really back then in 2008, 2009, when I was reading this series, I forget exactly when, I started reading this series just out of high school, and it was definitely, it was different. It was not something you tended to normally find or see, especially in just standard mangas of shonen and shoujo mangas. It was a lot different. The character of Aoi brings that three-dimensional level of the reality of the series, and in fact also Aoi's situation, which we will talk about, as I said, at the end of the video, so we can avoid spoilers here, but Aoi's situation throughout the series actually gives us a more realistic view of the world, where some people approve and some people do not, and that is very vindicative of it's very relatable to how the world works today. How, regardless if you are doing something outside of the established norm, potentially you're going to have naysayers and yaysayers on both sides, right? So definitely Aoi's character is one of the top characters, one of the best written characters in the series. My favorites, of course, fall in line right there. I really like Misaki. I really like Usui. And Aoi. Aoi is a definite great character. There's another character that shows up quite early on named Kano. And Kano is also a character that develops quite well. And I really definitely enjoy Kano because the main cast, for the most part, don't have a whole lot of focus or development. So the few that do actually do tend to shine quite easily. There is a slew of characters, of course. There's plenty of students at the school. There's rival schools. There's the staff at the maid cafe. There's the childhood friend. There's a lot of different characters here. But I find that mostly from the time they're introduced to the time at the end of the series, they mostly stay stagnant. They mostly stay the way they are or the way they have been. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because the focus is, of course, on our two main cast members, Usui and Misaki. But it is nice to see the developments of characters like Aoi and Kano as well. Definitely really good because Kano actually represents a reverse. A sort of a reverse of Misaki's attitude of being a man-hater. Kano represents more of an idea of a woman-hater, if you will. So there's definitely a dynamic there. But, without spoiling too much, there's more to that story, just like there's more to the man-hating Misaki. So there's plenty for a lot of people here to definitely enjoy and get their teeth into, sort of idea. So even though there's a very finite number of well-developed characters in the series, the ones that are developed and get some character background, storylines, and etc., they really do shine quite well. So even though it's limited, it's definitely quality over quantity with this character cast. So pros and cons, positives, negatives, what I liked, what I didn't like about the story. Let's just jump into a few things. I don't really know what to call this section. I'll figure it out by the time I type that up. But point of the matter is what is really great about this series? Well, once again, as I said in the character section, the very few amount of characters given proper screen time. A lot of characters get screen time, but they don't really change from chapter 1 all the way to the end of the series. They remain the characters and the personalities they are without much change or development. The ones that do, however, definitely shine extremely well, and you really get to know and love and just want to continue to see. Because there are a lot of chapters, half chapters, 0.5 chapters, that sort of tell a side story outside of the main story, right? And these are not to be skipped. These are actually some of the more enjoyable chapters, especially when there's more serious overtones. It's nice to see the characters basically goofing around in this situation or that situation or what have you. And it's definitely enjoyable. In fact, the anime itself actually adapted up until the point of season 1. It adapted all the half chapters up until the point it reached in the manga, because these stories were definitely very enjoyable, lighthearted, and fun, and we got to see our characters in these situations. So definitely the character cast, the ones that are developed, is a huge positive. A negative on that side, however, is once again the fact that most of the most of the cast remains stagnant. They remain the same. The villains remain the villains, for better or for worse. The good guys remain the good guys. The bubbly character remains bubbly. The serious character remains serious. The idiot trio always remains the idiot trio. And that's fine for the comedy levels of what we're going for here. Because the main focus is not meant to be on a slew of 15 or 20 different characters, all with their unique storylines and backstories and stuff. And not that we don't get some of that, but it's very few and far in between. So I would say, even though it is a positive to have the heavy focus on that, were this series to have continued up until 150, 200 chapters, it definitely would have started to feel stale. The only reason it doesn't at this point is because it is a shorter and under 100 chapter manga story, and so we don't notice that all the focus and energy has been poured into only a handful of characters, while there's a much larger cast at hand that don't really end up changing very much. So that's definitely, you could see that as a small negative that could have been a potentially much bigger negative were the story to have continued further. As far as another positive is definitely the fact that they do go through a lot of the tropes. They go through they do a beach episode. They do the meeting the parents, the childhood friend thing, the school festivals, the et cetera, et cetera. We do all that stuff. And that's always fun to see. You when you read a lot of shonen and shoujo mangas like I do, or even seinens and stuff, when you read enough manga, you definitely get to notice the tropes, but it doesn't mean a trope is bad. Just because a character is a tsundere does not mean that tsunderes are inherently bad. A tsunderes can be some of the best characters in a series. I mean, it's just the way it is. Transformations has been a thing since Sailor Moon and Goku. But at the end of the day, transformations are still used to this day, and some of them are simply, we just go gaga for, even now in 2021, when it happens in our favorite current running shonen. So I find that the idea that people sometimes criticize the tropes, but I like the tropes. I like that we got a beach episode. I like that we got the school festival. I like that we got this. I like that we got that. These things are definitely an enjoyable part of reading manga. What makes them tropes is because they're expected. And I really do expect them, and I enjoy them when they happen. So definitely that in the positive category. One of the negatives, though, I will say, is not so much the tropes, it's the later half, I should say. The direction they took in the manga in the last 15, 20 chapters. I think it's about that. Without any spoilers ahead, I didn't really care for the ending. Not the ending chapter. The ending chapter was fine. I didn't really mind it too much. I have my own nitpicks about that, and we're still not spoiling. But I didn't really enjoy the last little going off of the series. I thought it was the weakest part of the series, and honestly, I struggled to get through it a couple of times. I just recently reread the series before doing this video, and I can tell you, I ended up sort of doing this. It's not really a great. It had a really strong start for the series, especially with the premise being like, can you keep my secret, sort of idea, and the whole secret keeping and all the hilarity that ensues with that, with her trying to maintain being the demon president in 1 minute and then trying to be the subservient maid the next. It's always, and with Usui in the middle, hilarity always ensues. And I definitely enjoy that premise, but that seemed to get a little weaker as the series went on. By the time the end of the series came about, it was just, they were trying to up the ante because they needed things to change. And I just didn't think it was a great direction for the series. I definitely put the last going off of the series. I don't know how many chapters it was, maybe 10 or 12, but I definitely didn't enjoy that section. So that goes in the negatives. But yeah, so I think I explained a couple there, a couple on each side. Overall, as I said, I easily give this manga series an 8 out of 10. I love this series, I really do. I find it a great series that I've reread a handful of times. I've rewatched the anime 3 or 4, and once again, it is available on Netflix in both English and Japanese, so you can definitely go check it out. We only have 1 season, and it's unlikely we'll get a season 2, but we'll talk about that at the very end of the video. But yeah, so as far as pros and cons go, I wanted to make sure that I did list a couple of negatives here so you guys know it's not the perfect shoujo manga, but at the same time, the things that I really enjoyed about it, I loved so much more than the little nitpicks that I didn't enjoy. And once again, so I didn't enjoy the last going off. I also really hated the last 40 chapters of Seven Deadly Sins. That doesn't mean that the first 300 chapters I didn't enjoy. So there you go. It's all about the way your perspective, and the glass is, of course, yeah, that's about half. Half full, right? It's half full. This is not an empty beer glass. No, 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 no. So that's all I'm going to say, I guess, about pros and cons. I guess we can move into the... Let's move into the spoiler section. Let's talk about the ending. Let's talk about the spoilers. So this is going to be the spoiler section, guys, and we're just going to talk about a few quick things that I really wanted to talk about. Along with that, we will talk about the ending itself. But first and foremost, a couple of the spoiler things I wanted to talk about. Number one was Aoi. Because I already talked about Aoi in the character section, but didn't want to spoil too much. But what I was trying to say, now that we're sort of in the spoilers, so 3, 2, 1 spoilers, Aoi is dressing up as a girl. Aoi is a guy. He's a 14-year-old boy, and he dresses up like a girl. He doesn't want to be a girl necessarily. He doesn't want to have a sex change or anything like that. He just likes dresses. He likes pink. He likes cute things. He's the kid who liked playing with Barbies and got beat up in school. That's who he is. And the fact of the matter is that they don't do that, oh, he's playing with Barbies and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah. No. He's full on dressing up in full pink dresses, wig, makeup, the whole 9 yards, cutesy voice, the whole bit. Because that's what he likes. He likes being cute and stuff. And this, to me, is a bit of a breakout character for back then, and like, when was this? 09, 10, something like that. I was at high school, so around then. But, man, I'm old. But, yeah, I just found the character so interesting because we didn't see as much of that. Now, today, in this climate, in this change, in 2021, there's been so many breakout movements. There's been, all about sexual harassment and stuff, and gender equality, and especially LGBT and all that stuff. That sort of stuff, gay pride existed, but the LGBT was not exactly, that was in its infancy back when this character came out. At least it wasn't as in your, I don't know for certain, but I don't remember it being so in your face. I don't remember hearing the term LGBT plus in high school. That's just the way it was. It's relatively this decade's thing, not the previous's. So I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that this character, for me, was definitely an eye-opener. And it definitely showcased the right and wrong of different situations, or how people viewed right and wrong. Once you broke away from what is expected to be the norm, how you are treated, and how different people around you treat you. I definitely really enjoyed this character because his situation was very realistic. Different characters believed he should behave a certain way. And sure, he got into antics and such, and it was like, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. No, it's not because you're wearing a dress, no, because you're wearing a wig. You can't do it because A, B, and C reason. Had nothing to do with it. Sure, there were those moments, but for the most part, we had characters fundamentally disagree. He's a boy, he should act like a boy. But we also had the characters like Misaki and stuff that said, prove them all wrong. You're already cute as hell. I know you're cute. Be as cute as you want to be. But stop assaulting other people. Stop making it a self-gratifying sort of situation. Make it who you are. Stop trying to prove it to everyone else. You're just going to end up miserable. That's not the way to do this. Be who you want to be. Be who you are. And it was a fantastic storyline. Just going on, sometimes it was the focus, other times it was in the background, and I just really enjoyed it. And one of the best parts about this is that we see him sort of strive for something by the end of the series. We definitely see him strive, and he ends up reaching that goal, and it's fantastic. But not only that, I love the fact that he is a boy dressing like a girl, and everyone tells him, no, you're a boy, you should act like a boy, you should be like a boy, sort of idea. And that's what makes him very angry and bitter and hateful. The ironic part of his character is that he does the same thing, the same bullying, if you will, the same attitude towards our main character, Misaki. She should act more feminine. She should act like a girl. She should be more cute. She should wear dresses. All these things that people impose on Aoi, and he tries to defy and gets very upset at. They all laughed at me. They all hate me, and stuff like that. All that resentment he's built up, he throws it all back at Misaki. Misaki, of course, takes it all in stride and stuff, and that's where the development comes from, both for Misaki as a character, as they become quite close confidants in the series, but also it grows for Aoi, and it also makes Misaki grow as well. It's a double-edged sword there, or I guess two birds, one stone is a better analogy for that one. It's really, really good, and I certainly enjoyed it. Aoi's character, honestly, elevated this series so much for me, and made me sort of help me understand a lot of different other people's situations and how certain things shouldn't be judged. And we see characters in this series treat Aoi different based on that stuff, or think that he shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. So, as I said, but the best part was the fact that everyone's attacking Aoi, and we think, okay, that's unfair. He's a boy, but he likes cute things. What's wrong with that? He attacks Misaki with the same mentality, the same logic, and doesn't even realize it. I like to think by the end, they don't really acknowledge that in series, and I wish they had of, but they sort of do in a roundabout way. He recognizes Misaki is her best the way she is, just in the same way that Usui does and everybody else does. Misaki is her best the way she's always been, just the way she is. So I guess they sort of do acknowledge that, but that really awesome. So definitely that. What other spoiler? Yeah, so the ending. These are the only two things I really want to talk about, guys. The ending, because Aoi's character, definitely. Of course, I love all the moments with Usui and Misaki. I think they're great characters. I think they're a great couple. I think they have a lot of, being the power couple, being the dynamic as the golden duo, as Yukimaru points out. Yukimura, sorry. As he points out, he's like, what do you think of the class president Usui? I think they're like the golden duo. They're the power couple. They're the I guess the Power Rangers sort of idea. They're like the invincible duo, and that's, Kano attacks them for that. It's like, I'm going to separate the knight from the queen sort of idea, and they're looked on as a pair, and they can't be beat sort of idea, and we see that throughout the series. I just really love it. I love a lot of the romantic moments with them, because a lot of them are done to showcase that Usui might be good at doing this, that, and that Misaki, once again, this sort of builds on the Aoi stuff, that Misaki is not feminine. She can be feminine, but in the right situation and stuff, but she's not traditionally feminine. She can't cook. She, lashes out in anger. She likes to hit things, throw punches, when she gets embarrassed or whatever, she likes to push down her feelings. She acts very much like more like a traditional boy or tomboy that Aoi points out than a girl, but she still has these moments, and the best part is that Usui never asks her to act more feminine. There is a moment in the series later on that she wants to be more feminine, and she thinks, she goes, like, this isn't good, like, I'm supposed to act more like a woman sort of idea. I should be softer. I shouldn't be so hard all the time and all that stuff. And Usui basically tells her, no, like, but that wouldn't be you. Like, I love your blushing face when you are being cute and soft and feminine, but I find you cute when you're raging down the street after a pickpocket as well. I always find you cute, regardless. I love all your personalities, all your expressions, and that to me was really wholesome. I really enjoyed that section of it, though we'll get onto the controversy stuff here in a minute. But yeah, so I guess I talked about that, yeah, because these are things I really love to talk about. Yeah, because one of the big things to read is, of course, the romance. I love romance, guys. Romance always elevates a series for me. I've never read a series that I'd be like, yeah, you can take that romance out of there. That was unnecessary. It actually brings down the story. I've never read a story like that yet. Not saying it's not out there, but I've never read one. So definitely enjoy these two as a couple. They're so good together. It's a lot of fun. And the ending sort of sucked. So yeah, let's just talk about the ending really quick, because I'm losing light really fast here. Of course I recorded in the evening, goddamn. But yeah, so the ending, the whole idea of him going to Britain and all that stuff, and then her training with all the people, all that stuff felt super rushed, It was super dumb. It sort of was like Usui. Usui is blonde, but he sort of had a blonde moment. And it was like, why did you think that was a great idea to go to Britain? Like, they wouldn't lock you up. They wouldn't take your phone. They wouldn't create havoc and problems and all this stuff. The Walker family, the whole bit. It was just like, yeah, that to me really started to get on my nerves. That last little going off. And then the ending. What I didn't enjoy about the ending, the actual last chapter, this is just a nitpick, but it sounds like Misaki and Usui went off to do their own thing for like 10 years and then went and got married. So like they might have visited each other once every couple of years or something, but I think there was a line saying they hadn't seen each other in like 5 years or something, and I was just like, you know, after all the fighting, after all the shit of to be together, to stick together, I'm coming to Britain to get you sort of idea, and it's just like, oh, well, all right, whatever. Like, no, fight for that. Like, it just sort of irked me a little bit. Is it within their characters to do that? Sure, but it doesn't mean I liked it. I don't like my characters being apart. And when they're finally a couple, when they finally get to be together, I like to think they were happy and wholesome for all the years in between. When we get that epilogue chapter that happens in most shoujos and most shonens, we get the 10 years later, the 5 years later, people getting married, people having kids. I like to believe that they were together most of that time, because I am in a long distance relationship with my wife who lives 4,000 miles in one of those directions, and it's very difficult. It's very hard. And I've been doing that for a number of years now, and I don't wish that on anybody. That it's very difficult to keep that going. So, you know, some people have told me that I make it look very easy. And it's like, well, I have steps to reason for that, you know, but I mean, still, it can feel like that weight can crush on you and stuff when you don't see, you know, your significant other, your loved one, for a very long amounts of time. It's very, very difficult. So I hate the fact that they worked so hard to get together. She learned all the British stuff, and then she flew across to get him, and it was all like breaking and entering and all this crazy stuff just for them to be like, okay, well, now that that's over, I'll see you in 5 years. Didn't like that detail. Did not like it. So I could keep ranting about this, but eventually all you guys are going to see are the whites of my eyes, because it's getting extremely dark. Might be able to edit this in post-production. But yeah, so that's the spoilers tab. Let's move on to the final two parts of the video. We'll have the controversy surrounding this series and why we won't be getting a season 2, or very unlikely to, and then we'll have final thoughts, and that'll be the end of the video. So let's move on. Controversy, criticism, and everything in between. Now, normally when you do a manga, anime, any type of review, you don't really tend to have this sort of section, but I felt like it's sort of the big elephant in the room when we're talking about Maid-sama. So I figure let's just have this quick little window right before we get to the final thoughts section of the video and talk about it without completely ignoring it in this video, because that wouldn't do it justice. Because once in around 2010, 2011, when the anime came out, it got a lot of flack. It got a stupid amount of criticisms, toting things about stalkerism, abusive relationships, toxicity, sexism. A lot of things were said about not only the actual main story as a whole, but especially considering the main love interest, Usui Takumi. Now, I have gone on and done a tiny bit of research, guys. Not a whole lot, because that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to tell you guys about a series that I think you'll like. A series that I really love, and I really honestly enjoy it, both the anime adaptation and the manga. And nothing that somebody writes on an article about why it's a toxic story or why it's this or why it's that is really going to change that factor for me. I might be able to see things different in the series, and I can recognize its faults, but at the same time, I still really enjoyed the series. I enjoyed it when I first read it, and I enjoyed it last week when I finished reading it for a third, fourth time. So what am I talking about here? Well, the fact of the matter is that nowadays in 2021 and in the last decade, we have had a number of movements that have really focused on gender equality, sexism in the workplace, toxic relationships, etc. The word toxic or toxicity in relationships has only been sort of a new term used to talk about relationships ever since I mean, it's really a relatively new term, and it's been applied to this story. Now, basically, I'm not going to sit here and deny any of the allegations. Some of them are completely far-fetched. There was one article that talked about it being, or at least the title said, that Maid-sama was entirely homophobic and communist-based. So, I mean, you're going to have a little bit of, okay, borderline fake news all the way to a stretch of just blatantly wrong. But you're also going to have the actual concrete, legitimate claims about problems in any series. And in this case, I'm not here to deny any of them. I'm just here to acknowledge them, and I'm not going to talk about any one specific. I'm just going to talk about the fact that there is controversy around this series. Some people point out the whole subservient attitude towards the whole maid cafe, and that premise alone is a problem. Now, me personally, I don't see that as an issue. This is a totally female-dominated business run by a businesswoman who chooses to, do this sort of practice, who decided to build her business based on this, around this theme. So I never saw the attacks on the actual maid cafe style being anything but people not understanding it. People from the West not understanding people from the East. That's what I garnered from that. So I sort of ignored most of those articles because, in all honesty, when you think about it, we have a successful businesswoman who runs a business entirely composed of a female staff. I'm sort of failing to see the problem here. That's actually a progressive thing. That's a good thing, is it not? So regardless of your feelings towards the whole idea of master-servant or, maid-to-master sort of repertoire, this is a profession that and a business they all chose to be in. It's not a subserviency. There's nothing of that sort of nature in that. And every employee recognizes that this is their expected level of duties based on that. They feel free to not choose that job and feel free to not partake in it at all. So I never saw the problem. The big one that I have 100% agreement with is some of the tendencies that are played off for laughs regarding Usui. Usui is, well, he's a bit of a stalker. Let's just cut the crap. He is a bit of a stalker, and unfortunately that painted a really bad light given the anime adaptation. Hence why we will unlikely ever get a season 2 because of this factor. A lot of people pointed out some of the overbearing, sexist, and stalkerish tendencies that Usui had. Sure, he's the pretty boy who's good at everything, and we know that he actually does love and care for Masaki, but at the same time, some of his, especially his early on antics, realistically would look like, holy crap, that guy's a total creep in reality, in the real world, right? So I'm not here to deny any of that. That is actually some of the things that he does is sort of like, okay, yeah. And they play it off for laughs in the series. The series is aware of this, and that's supposed to be played off as the joke, that he's an outer space alien stalker, pervert stalker. That's sort of his thing, and Masaki continuously calls him that, sort of to like undermine him or hurt his feelings or what have you. And that's played off for laughs, and a lot of people didn't like the fact that it was played off for laughs. This is actually something that does happen in reality. It is a very serious thing and should not be viewed as a romantic, I guess, courtship, if you will. That being said, I do agree with the sentiments behind it, but at the end of the day, the moments that Usui acts like this, and they should not be ignored, but they are not the relative for the entirety of the series. They are a select few episodes or chapters that Usui acts in this way. I'm not excusing his behavior, and I am not here to defend his behavior in any way, shape, or form. But once again, not only is this a fictional story with manga adaptations and a bunch of tropes alongside it, it also, once again, was written in a certain time. Every single thing that we read nowadays is being judged by the following year. I write something in 2019, it'll be judged in 2020 totally differently. To this day, people will ban list movies from the 30s because the standard and society standard on what is acceptable has changed. And not necessarily that it is a bad thing, and that is progressive, but the idea of judging things based on 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago and applying the standards after society has had the chance to have their civil rights movements, the women's rights movements, LGBT being at the forefront, the Me Too movement, all of these things were relevant to the changes that we now take for granted in society. And the fact is that we try to take them and we try to apply them to all of human history. I've always found that as an unfair deal, but maybe it doesn't apply here. However, I just wanted to really bring it up and say that, yeah, there is controversy around this. It's unlikely we're ever going to get a season 2, given the current climate of, well, the internet, in all honesty. In the current climate of the Western world and the Eastern world, in the first world, in the civilization of 2021, it's very unlikely we will ever get a season 2 based on this fact alone, based on the amount of flack that the series did get for these things, and they overshadowed any of the positives, like the breakout character of Aoi, or the fact that it was a very realistic interpretation of how multiple people view something outside of the norm, like Aoi and his situation. So, that being said, they took away all that and we were left with the negative. So, I'm not, as I said, going to go into any more detail about this. There was some certain moments with Hinata, who is the childhood friend character love interest, and with Usui especially, that people really took a bad pen to. And I'm not going to say that they're, once again, I am not here defending or trying to excuse away any of the legitimate feelings that people had towards certain episodes and certain manga chapters in which Usui did behave overbearing, did behave like a stalker, was acting, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Sexist. Absolutely. These traits did happen. But Usui is not a perfect character. And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of people don't tend to understand, is that he might be a Prince Charming in some respects, but in other respects, he's not perfect. He does have his flaws. And I always like to think that his way of life, which he does change halfway through the series, and he definitely gets character development, I like to think that some of those tendencies start to go away, that he develops as a character. He was wrong in the beginning of the series, and now he's starting to make things more right. That's called character development. Nobody is born perfect. We all have our wrong opinions, our wrong statements, our wrong ideologies that after experiencing certain things do tend to change over time given the proper information, given more relevant information. So, that being said, I just wanted to really quickly talk about that, quickly being me, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't avoiding that topic. We are covering it here, and let's just move on to final thoughts. The series is great. Let's just say it's a solid 8 out of 10, 8.5 easily for me. Both the anime adaptation, but more so the manga. I so enjoyed the manga. Other than, as I already talked about, the ending was not exactly the way that I had envisioned this series going. And it sort of ended a little too quickly for me. All of a sudden the pacing seems to increase. There's a lot more drama and less romance. And after a while, it just seems like they were trying to rush into finishing the series while keeping all the storylines wrapped up in a neat little bow. So there was a few issues here and there. And it's not a perfect series. But as far as a shoujo manga goes, I found it unique in so many ways that I've already talked about earlier in this video. It really was something that stayed with me, and every single time somebody mentions something like shoujo to me, one of the immediate, I think of a few small things. I think of Sailor Moon, and I think of Suzuka and works by Seo Koji, but then another one that just enters my mind is Maid-sama. Almost every single time, it's like, there's a series, because it stood out. Why did it stand out? I've tried to explain that a couple of times in this video. Maybe it stands out for me in a different way than it would for you. If you have read the series, maybe we are on totally opposite sides of the fence, but we both appreciate the series. If you haven't read the series, I urge you to pick it up. It is a really good series. It's not that long a read either. It's a simple story, and it works out well. It's got, as I said, it's got well-developed characters for the limited amount that they are, and following the story, it doesn't end up dragging itself out for too long just for the money, just for the marketing, right? So, thankfully, I just really enjoyed the series, and if you have the time, if you're more of an anime viewer, I would argue that the that the manga is a far better telling. However, the anime does do quite a bit of justice to the series. I find it totally fine. So definitely, whether you are a sub or a dub watcher, definitely go check out the anime itself. It's about, I believe it's 25, 27 episodes on Netflix. As I said before, we're only ever going to get the one season. We're never going to get the season 2 with all the controversy and criticisms that it got previously back 10 years ago. But that being said, we can always hope, but I really doubt it. But yeah, so those are my final thoughts on it, guys. It was really just a great series overall. And I think that anybody who enjoys shoujo, anybody who enjoys a good romance story with a couple of strong-willed characters and sort of the idea of a dynamic duo pairing rather than the sweet, innocent high schooler with the pretty boy with the prom king sort of idea. Not really the jock with the cheerleader story, but something a little bit with more uniqueness, a little bit more of a twist. I urge you to pick this series up. It's definitely fantastic, and it's definitely got a lot of uniqueness to it. I'm going to keep saying the word unique. How many times did I say unique in this video? I'm sure it numbers at least 9. So either way, hope you guys enjoyed. Those are the final thoughts of, well, Maid-sama. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed this review. I know it was a little haphazard. I had to record it over the course of 2 days, given my lighting problems, and stuff like that. And I really hate recording a video, with natural light and then turning on the light that is not very good lighting. So, but I hope that during the editing process, this will appear a lot better. But yeah, this was my favorite shoujo manga review to count down for our 500 subscriber milestone video. So there's another one off the list. Which one do you guys want next? Let me know in the comment section down below. As I said before, there's already a couple of these videos out there, so you can definitely go check the list in those videos at certain timestamps. And you will be able to tell me which one do you want me to talk about next, because I'm always willing to listen to you guys, of course. Let me know if you've ever read this series, if I've inspired you to pick up the series, or if you're not sure about what type of shoujo to get into and you're thinking that, hey, is this a good shoujo to get into? All those above questions. I'm always curious to hear about your guys' opinions on the series that I'm talking about. So this was Maid-sama. Like, comment, and subscribe. Great series. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. We will see you back here next time. Don't forget to drink responsibly as always, and we'll see ya. Bye.